Though this land is shrouded in pain and darkness, it teems with life. Behold this sacred grove. But beware, nature protects itself. But do not forget, whatever you sow, you must harvest.
Hey Exiles, PoE Academy here. 3.11 Harvest Moon League awaits. As a farmer, our quest is to grow bonsais, orchidea and... sorry, that's the wrong script. In Harvest League, we plant seeds, grow them and smash anything that comes out of it. From what we've seen so far, clear speed is not as important as it was in other leagues, which opens up a lot more room for decent starter builds. I handpicked every single build in this list not because they are PoE warriors, but provide an affordable and reliable way to start a league. Links to the original build guides, a leveling guide and PoBs are in the description down below. I'm very hyped to share them with you, so let's get right into it. The first build in this list is a Toxic Rain or Caustic Arrow Trickster. Notorious for being a decent choice as a league starter, Hasunic delivers a well-rounded chaos damage based Trickster build that can take on any content in the game with somewhat little investment. Toxic Rain is a bow skill like Rain of Arrows. It fires multiple arrows up in the air which land and drop spores that deal chaos damage once exploded after a short delay. While affected by the chaos damage over time, enemies are slowed too, which is a nice defensive bonus. It's a strong skill, especially for single target, while Caustic Arrow is better for clearing maps. The build uses acrobatics and phase acrobatics as well as elemental immunity later on with 4 certain gear pieces. Other than that, the Trickster Ascendancy and all the strong chaos damage over time nodes on the tree do all the heavy work for you. Hasunic recommends focusing on a good bow first, then simply fill resistances and get as much life as possible. I like it when builds work without any specific gear but have a lot of different gear options later on, which this build does as it benefits a lot from a wide variety of influence items in the endgame. Luckily, Hasunic has put up a VOD on Twitch where you can follow him step by step reaching Kitaver in under 4 hours with his build. Second is a Volatile Dead Spellslinger Necromancer by GucciPradas that not only has decent damage but is extremely tanky too. He has won the Chinese hardcore race with it, which shows that the build is very much capable of a quick league start. Volatile Dead is a skill that explodes corpses on the ground, which are then turned into moving fireballs that seek and destroy enemies for a short duration. To spawn these volatiles, you either use dead enemies or you must create corpses yourself by using Desecrate, which was typically achieved with Poet Pen wands. With the introduction of the Spellslinger support gem in 3.10, you can now use these 2 skills with any wands you like, allowing more versatile builds. Simply use a Spellslinger setup for both Volatile Dead and Desecrate and you're good to go. When you look at the PoB, you will notice that the gear and tree is quite generic, which is something I really like because you can adapt it better to the items you get in your hands early in the league. You pick up many life and block nodes in the passive tree paired with some spell damage nodes. With up to 7000 life, 75% chance to block both attacks and spells, and more than 1 million damage, this build is very tanky and does some decent damage at the same time. Despite rare items with life and resistances, you just want to get your hands on 2 items real quick. First is a ring with flammability on hit, and the second one is a Rumi's Granite Flask. You level this character by playing any spells you like until you have both your Volatile Dead Spellslinger setup and your Desecrate Spellslinger setup. Once you have obtained them, simply use them and crush through all the acts and bosses with ease. There is a more detailed video on how to level any Spellslinger character effectively by Marcus Nordstrom, so if you want to play this build, you might want to check out this video. Not many use it for a league start, but bleed builds are actually quite decent league starters. mbXtreme just recently published his own approach to this archetype with his Split Arrow Bleed Bow Gladiator. Bleed is an ailment that deals physical damage over time to the affected target, and moving targets suffer increased bleeding damage. Note that you can inflict bleed with physical damage hits only, so you must apply them either with melee weapons or bows. Many bow bleed builds use rain of arrows, but this build demonstrates that split arrow is a very powerful alternative too. It is just very satisfying to see all the mobs dying when they run after you, and mbXtreme has accomplished to put out quite some substantial damage numbers with just mediocre gear in his build guide. This build uses the Resolute technique Keystone, which lets your attacks always hit. Besides that, he simply scales bleed damage over time and life. With almost 1.5 million DPS on average gear and 200% increased maximum life on level 90, this build hits hard and can take quite some hits. These damage numbers are achieved by abusing one Lion Eyes Fall jewel very effectively in the Marauder starting area, so you definitely want to make this item a top priority on your item list. If you can't afford it, farm the divination card the Lion until you get one. Also, you want to craft a Marakav bow with 60% chance for a bleeding inflicted with this weapon to deal 100% more damage to push your damage significantly. To round things up, Killer just released a leveling guide for any bleed bow character that you can use as a reference for your league start. I wanted to include a Chieftain Slam build first, but after some quick work in PoB I wasn't able to find any good setup, which is why I can't recommend to start a league with it. However, I used Dex's Cyclone build to start 3.10 Delirium League with, and it's by far the smoothest and most versatile melee starter I've played so far. Good news is that with some smaller tweaks we can use it with two-handed axes or swords too. Cyclone lets you channel through enemies while dealing damage, which is a very forgiving mechanic. Ever since GGG has buffed Cyclone to being a channeled skill, this attack skill is one of the most used skills in the entire game for a good reason. The gem adds flat physical damage for each gem level, which is a big plus since your character scales more easily into endgame, and speaking of endgame, there are plenty of ways to bring your Cyclone damage to absurd numbers. Dex's build mainly focuses on Impale to scale its damage. If you want to learn how this mechanic works and how you can level it, I've created an in-depth guide that you can watch if you click the top right notification on this video now. Note that the POB under this video is a slightly adapted version of his build where we Cyclone as a Berserker with a two-handed weapon. The potential damage numbers even with very bad gear are crazy, but keep in mind that this only really applies for single target, and the clear of a Berserker is not as good as the clear of a Slayer. But we need the stun immunity from Berserker since with 3.11 Cyclone does not make you immune to stuns anymore. The last build in this list is ShakCentral's Vortex for Dummies. He describes his own build with whether you want a character easily geared in solo self-hound, a safe boss killer, or a build that deals constant damage while maneuvering around, you will find what you need inside. The slight nerfs to gold dot multiplier on the tree didn't seem to let the build struggle, and the combination of Vortex with the new Wintertide brand skill has the potential to make this build even stronger. Vortex by itself is already a strong cold spell that explodes for cold damage in an area around the character and leaves a ground effect which chills and deals heavy cold damage over time. It is often paired with Cold Snap. Like Cyclone, it has a very forgiving playstyle as you can move around and kill enemies while dodging all their abilities. The build uses the Elemental Overload Keystone to further boost its damage, and, depending on whether you want to go CI or low life in endgame, you might be using Chaos Inoculation or Pain Attunement. ShakCentral recommends reading his guide carefully if you don't really know what you're doing, as Vortex builds tend to be very flexible in terms of gearing and passive choices, and you can quickly get overwhelmed if you're not too experienced with this kind of archetype. His POB also features a rich leveling guide, which will make your life getting through acts much more convenient. While we are ending this video, I wanted to show you some honorable mentions in the background that would have made the video too long, but I wanted to share with you guys anyways. I really want to start Harvest League as the Volatile Dead Spellslinger because I like the Poet's Pen playstyle and that the build is well balanced between defense and offense. What do you think about my top 5 starter list? Are you going to start with one of my builds? Please share your thoughts in the comments, I'm always excited to read them. Thanks for staying with me until the end, and see you in the next one.